Hello, everyone. Come on in. So, today we're going to be talking a little bit about my journey. I'm here with my piping hot tea for the piping hot tea. And yeah, this is something, I don't know why I always feel nervous talking about this, even though I've shared before, but today we're going to go much more in depth in my journey. And I know I haven't really introduced myself to a lot of my new community that's been on here for a while. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity to talk about my history with my fitness journey, with what my experience with my relationship with food, with the programs that I've tried, my relationship with my body, and in the process, and really where I am today and what's brought me here. So I guess we'll start from the beginning. And so bear with me. This is going to be a bit of a rant, but I want to share and be vulnerable with you guys and really explain my journey. And so you understand, where I'm coming from. And I understand everyone's journey is different. Obviously, this is just what I went through. And so, hi, Isabella, welcome. So just to start in, high school, I always struggled with my self-esteem and my body image. And I think, the very first time I remember starting to think about my body more and comparing myself was when I went to an all-girls school. And in the all-girls school, while it was amazing, obviously many perks and loved it, it was also a time of comparison to other girls. And it really brought out some traits that, I carried on to, for a very long time in my life, and specifically around eating habits and the way, people wanted to look or talked about their bodies. And I just remember, hearing other girls talking about their bodies and thinking, if they're talking this way about themselves, like, what about me? Like, what do I look like? What, should I be, wanting to change my body and thinking about that? And so that was really the first time I started to notice that self-comparison and that self-esteem. And I remember one of the biggest comments that has, still impacts me to this day, even though I've overcome it, is when I got a comment about the back of my legs. I used to play tennis in high school, and I remember someone looking at, the back of my legs and saying, your legs are flabby, like you need to build muscle. And I was like 15 or 14 at that point. And so really just started, whoops, I don't know what just happened. It really started to open up my eyes to a lot of things about my body that I hadn't really thought about before. And it started to impact me, without knowing it. So fast forward to grade 11, this is where I actually lost a significant amount of weight without understanding what was actually happening. And I started to have these weird, views of food. I started to not really feel hungry. I didn't even really want to eat. I wasn't actively not trying to, but I think these these conversations and just comparison and what we were seeing in the media, and like it was the era of Victoria's Secret fashion shows. And I remember sitting as a 16-year-old girl in my living room watching the Victoria's Secret fashion show and thinking, oh my gosh, like I just want to be like skinny like that, and I just want to look like that. And so fast forward to grade 11, I had lost a significant amount of weight and didn't really know what was happening. All I remember was just eating really small portions of food and just like not really being hungry and not wanting to eat. And obviously it was not in a healthy way at all. And I was hyper focused on the way that I wanted to look. I would constantly body check myself in the mirror. I would constantly, when I was going to play tennis, I would do extra cardio to try and burn more calories. And this is really where like the eating behaviors and unhealthy behaviors started. And it was when kind of that cycle of restriction and binging started to appear. In grade 12, I had gained the weight back and things had seemed normal, but I was still struggling with my self-esteem. And I think that the biggest thing here for me was that even though I didn't look like it, I was struggling. And because I didn't look like it physically, like I wasn't, I was always, people saw me as the, fit, sporty, girl, like the one that played tennis in high school. And, I seemed confident on the outside, but on the inside, I just really wasn't. And so when I went to university, as most, people experience when they go to university, they start to have more unhealthy habits. Maybe they're not sleeping well, they're not drinking more, they're eating out more. And I started to see not only changes in my body, but my energy and my mindset, and just this constant kind of negative cycle in my mind. And so this is when I started to say, okay, maybe I don't want to be skinny. I want to build muscle and I want to be strong. And although I said that, I think I still cared about being small, and I still cared about I for sure still cared about how I wanted to look. And so I started to actually invest in programs because I was no longer playing tennis. I wasn't as active as I was in school, and I was seeing these changes in my body that were making me feel worse and more self-conscious. So I actually remember I worked with 3 different programs in the first year of university, and there was nothing wrong with these programs. It was just my mindset at the time. So I don't think these programs had an intentional, way of being restrictive or being unhealthy, but because my mindset was not right, that is the only way that I viewed them. And so I was a very big perfectionist. I, still hold myself to a high standard, but at this time I really felt like it was an unrealistic standard that I was holding to myself. And that's why I was so hyper focused on my appearance, because I cared so much about what other people thought of me. And I cared just so much about the way that I looked that I was not understanding why I couldn't portray and look the way that I wanted to look when I felt like I had other things figured out. I worked hard in school, I wanted to do well in my career, and I was always willing to work hard. So why wasn't, my perfectionism and the standards that I was holding to myself, why weren't they, helping me look the way that I wanted to? And so one of the programs that I invested in was a program that actually wanted me to intermittent fast. And I had no idea what I was doing. I had no knowledge in this space. The only knowledge I had was from my sports experience in school and working out a little bit. So I didn't understand that the more I exercised, the more hungry I would get, and the more that this would impact, my ability to actually follow through on the program. So the intermittent fasting was supposed to be coupled with, just 3 resistance training workouts per week. I tried to go even more than that. I would go in the cardio machine. Oh, that's amazing. My mindful eating has been so much better, and I don't feel like I'm held hostage by food anymore. That's awesome. That makes me so happy. Why don't you post in the chat any questions or what specifically helped you? I would love to hear that. We can get to that later, Nuthan. So where was I with the program? So with the intermittent fasting, this was like the catalyst to a very, very bad cycle of food. And like I said, these programs that I invested in were great if I was in the right headspace and I had knowledge and I understand what I was supposed to be doing, they would have worked. But because I didn't understand, it was just a plan telling me what to do. I didn't get that one food wouldn't make me gain weight. I didn't get that over exercising was bad. I didn't get just that a hyper obsession was going to lead to this really long cycle of, inconsistency and really just poor mental health. And so I didn't think they were working. I would just say these programs aren't working for me. I don't know why I'm not seeing results. And I would jump to the next one. Honestly, I even went vegan for a week. I did so many things, and I thought that I was eating healthy. That was the problem. I was eating healthy, but I was trying to focus on the lowest calorie options all day, every day. I was counting my calories to the T, and I would look at my calorie counter. I'd be intermittent fasting. I'd be waiting till 12, eating a 200 or 300 calorie meal, and not understanding that I was just fasting for 16 hours, how that's going to impact me. So by the end of the day, 6 p.m., 7 p.m. would come around. I'd be thinking about food. I'd overeat. I'd feel so guilty and ashamed. I wouldn't understand. And I just kept getting so frustrated because I wasn't seeing changes in my body, but I felt like I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing. The very last program I tried was a program with an online coach who, again, she was great. She had a lot of knowledge, but the problem was it was so focused on my body. So I was sending progress photos to her every single week, And every single week I would send a progress photo and I wasn't seeing changes. And then she would email me back and tell me that I needed to make some sort of adjustment with my diet or increase my activity because I wasn't seeing changes. The problem was I wasn't actually following the plan. And so she was, telling me to make these changes because it was, if I was following the plan and it wasn't working, but that just more activity, more obsession with food, more overeating would just cause me to kind of yo-yo back and forth. And this just created this cycle in my head of, I'm not seeing results. I can't do this. I need to cut calories more. I need to work out more. And it just progressively kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I know I've never really shared this outright before, but this is actually where I went from the super hyper control with food and I swung all the way to the other end of the pendulum. I spent so many years in a restrictive mindset that I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't be so controlling and obsessed with food. And I started to binge and overeat. And this is really where I developed my ED. And it's not really something I've ever actually talked about on here. But it was a downward spiral. I felt so isolated. I felt so alone, and I didn't want to share it with anyone because I felt ashamed. And again, I that wasn't my identity to the outside world. People thought that I was just someone that was active, that I was someone that ate healthy, and that was it. And I didn't look like I was struggling. And so all I ever wanted was to have the confidence that I had on the outside to the world to be how I felt on the inside. And I feel like I'm getting a little emotional right now because, oh my gosh. It was just a very sad time in my life. And, sorry. Did not think I was going to cry on this today. It was a sad time in my life because I knew that there was a better option and I knew that this wasn't the way that it was supposed to be, but it was. And I just felt very alone. And I just felt like social media was so fake and I knew it was fake, but I didn't understand that what other people were showing and the progress they were making, that it wasn't always going to be the same for everyone and every person, but I was holding myself to that standard because I, again, had such high expectations for myself. And the biggest shift for me really was this turning point, this point where I was like, I just can't have this impact me anymore, because it wasn't just impacting my body, it was impacting how I was showing up in school, how I was showing up with my friends, oh my God, whoa. Okay, let's take a sec. Breathe. Okay, Steph, breathe. Hi, everyone. Wow. I honestly don't think I've talked about this in so long because I've been showing up on here wanting to just help people, which I am, and I'm happy I am, but I think sometimes it's good to take a step back to reflect on what you've overcome, and I'm so proud of myself for everything. Okay, so the biggest shift for me, what really happened was a couple of things, honestly. So this was about 6 years ago now, when I was at the height of my relationship with food and struggles in my body that were impacting me. And first of all, it was impacting every area of my life. It was impacting, I was running a business in university. I didn't have the confidence. I didn't think that I could keep returning and growing the business. I decided to, stop. I was in a relationship at the time, still in my relationship, and he's amazing, but I just really felt like I wasn't showing up the way that I wanted to. And I was very unclear. I wasn't present. I wasn't present in the relationship and who I wanted to be. I was just always consumed with how I wanted to look, with calories, with exercise, and those thoughts just consumed me all the time. And so I had to, and I realized, if I wanted to have the life that I wanted to live, if I wanted to be the person that I wanted to be, the way that I'm showing up right now is just not it. I don't want to be the person that's consumed by this. I don't want to be the person that makes fitness my identity and my obsession. I firmly believe that fitness should enrich your life, not consume your life. And I don't think there was anything that I was doing wrong. There was nothing wrong with me. It wasn't due to a lack of willpower or discipline. It was due to a lack of, honestly, education and not having the right mindset or understanding of what your fitness journey should be. Your fitness journey should not only be about how you want to look, even though that's great and you can still want to look a certain way, but it should be about the person that you're becoming and how it enriches the rest of your life, not taking over your life. And so when I started to understand this and I started to say, hey, you know what? I've been struggling for 6 or 7 years. I can't keep doing the same things and getting, different results. So what can I do? What am I not doing? And the first thing was understanding food and my mindset. Actually, in my first business, I was in an amazing community where they talked a lot about mindset and how you needed to have a certain mindset to show up. And I think that really sparked something in me, and understanding that my mindset and the way that I was approaching my journey was not right. I was only looking at it to look a certain way, and I needed to shift to how can I focus on sustainable habits? How can I focus on this being a lifestyle? Because if this is my lifestyle right now, I cannot continue. I cannot continue doing this. So I started to change to what can I add to my life rather than what can I remove. So can I add more rest? Can I add more knowledge, more understanding of nutrition? Can I add more sustainable movement? So I started to shift from this being a diet to this being a lifestyle, and not from how I wanted to look, but the person that I wanted to become, and what type of person would be happy in her fitness journey. What type of person would be consistent? What type of person wouldn't have fitness consume her life? Well, she would be one that understands how to fuel her body, that understands how to have balance, that understands how to take rest when she needs it, and obviously just show up for herself. And I finally realized that confidence didn't come from the way that I looked. It came from the respect and self-trust that I built along the way for showing up in myself the way that I valued and the way that I wanted to look. And so that's really why I do what I do. And I truly want to help other women that are struggling with this, and just help them understand that, yes, while it's great to look the way that you want to look, it's also so important to feel the way you want to feel. And just because you look the way that you want to look doesn't mean you're going to feel amazing. And so feeling good doesn't come at that end result. It comes in the journey and the process and showing up for yourself the right way. And yeah, I think that's why and even just from a progress photo standpoint, I was traumatized from that experience when I was taking progress photos with that coach, because every time I would send a photo in and every time it wasn't the way that I wanted to look, it just made me feel so discouraged. And I think that while progress photos are great, they don't show the whole transformation. They don't show the mental transformation or the habits that are built and the person that you've become, or even the fact that that was sustainable. So just because someone looks healthy or looks like they've had an amazing transformation doesn't mean that they feel healthy or they feel like they've done it in a healthy way. So I guess I really just want to say and sum this up, and I know this has been a bit of a wild emotional roller coaster, but I wouldn't change anything, because now going through what I've been through, I'm here, I'm doing what I love, I'm helping other women, I feel amazing, and I no longer look at macro counting as an obsessive thing. I had to stop it for a while. I had to understand how to eat differently, but I no longer have that consume my life. I no longer go to dinner and come home and feel disgusted because I'm so overfull and ate so much and feeling like the next day I'm going to have to cut calories. I no longer just work out to burn calories. I work out because it makes me feel good and because it's the way that I want to look. And so I wouldn't change any of that for the world, but if anyone here is listening that has had any sort of similar experience to me, just know that the worst thing to do is to go through it alone like I did. And if I had had some help, if I had shared with the people who love me and surround me, which have been so supportive, then I wouldn't have felt so alone. I probably would have, figured it out sooner. and I wouldn't have been as unhappy in the process. So just know you don't have to go through this alone. You can get help. And if you do feel any sort of way, if you feel like you resonate to this at all, just send me a DM. I want to help you no matter what it is, even just guide you in the right direction, because I know all too well that just being in it alone and feeling discouraged and frustrated and unhappy in the process, in that vicious cycle, is the worst thing to do. So I hope this helped. I know I've never really shared this deeply before, but I'm happy to have come on here. I'm going to stay on for maybe some questions or comments. I'm going to read through some of the comments that I missed, and then we'll hop off. So let's go back to the top here. Yeah, first stopping intermittent fasting. Oh, amazing. So intermittent fasting was definitely the thing that I needed to stop as well. As soon as I started to implement consistent meal times, having a breakfast, and it was more so about learning how to eat, not what to eat. It wasn't about what to eat. It was actually relearning how to eat. Staying in tune to your needs, making sure I'm drinking enough water, but really eating whatever I want, controlling my portions. Absolutely. My emotional eating was out of control. I realized how much the relationships around me affect that. The mental health part is everything, 100%. Oh, thank you, Isabella. Thank you, everyone. Well, I really appreciate you joining. Thank you so much for being here. And if, like I said, if you feel like you need support in any way, please just send me a DM. I am here to support you. And I love you all. Thank you so much. I hope you have an amazing Friday, and we'll see you next time. Bye.